The Federalists versus the Democratic Republicans by Isha, Ali, Alina, and Rosa. As the young republic's first full decade of nationhood was coming to a close, conflicts over political and foreign affairs arose, undermining the unity of America. As the presidential election of 1800 approached, different political ideologies amongst the people became evident. The first political parties of America, the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans, were a result of the tensions between Alexander Hamilton and Thomas Jefferson. Both were selected by Washington to join his cabinet as Secretary of Treasury and Secretary of State. Hamilton was born in the British West Indies, which caused his loyalty to America to be questioned. This influenced the Federalists to be pro-British. Hamilton fought for a national bank, while Jefferson believed in separate state banks. Hamilton believed that the Constitution permitted this national bank and that it was necessary and proper. This belief was a loose interpretation of the Constitution. Jefferson thought that this bank was forbidden in the Constitution and that there should be state-controlled banks instead, due to the 10th Amendment stating that all power not delegated in the Constitution is given to the states. This was a strict interpretation of the Constitution. These two opposing sides soon formed the two political parties of America during this time. What at first was a feud between two political figures grew into political parties. Hamilton's policies, such as the National Bank and the excise tax, took away some of the states' rights, causing organized opposition. The excise tax was a tax that the people had to pay on sinful goods such as alcohol. When France declared war on Britain, the two political parties were forced to pick sides. The Democratic Republicans favored honoring their alliance with France and joining in the war. On the other hand, the Federalists sided with the British but did not want to get involved. In 1793, Washington issued the Neutrality Proclamation, stating that the U.S. was to stay neutral in the war because they were economically, politically, and militarily weak. The Democratic Republicans were infuriated by this proclamation, especially since Washington did not consult Congress about it, while the Federalists were elated due to Washington's opinion. Furthermore, Jay's Treaty fanned the flames between the two political parties. It stated that Britain had to abandon U.S. soil and pay the money lost from seized merchant ships, and Americans had to pay their pre-Revolutionary War debts. This angered the Democratic Republicans because the Southern farmers had to pay their debts, while the Northern merchants were collecting payments from the British impressments. In addition to Jay's Treaty, the Alien Laws and Sedition Act also added fuel to the feud between the two political parties. The Federalists did not favor the poor people, but also did not want them to join the Democratic Republicans. So they passed the Alien Laws so that poor immigrants could not gain citizenship as easily. Then, the Sedition Act was passed, prohibiting the people from defaming the government. This was aimed towards the Democratic Republicans and the newspapers. Jefferson feared that if the Federalists managed to choke free speech and press, they would wipe out all other constitutional guarantees, stamping his own political party out of existence. Because the Federalists were judges, they convicted innocent Jeffersonian editors. For instance, a Jeffersonian editor was jailed for 4 months because he wrote a hostile article on President Adams. Both of these political parties represented the contradicting views of Americans. The Federalists believed in a strong central government ruled by the best people, while the Democratic Republicans wanted a weaker federal government and stronger state governments or rule by the masses. Most of the Federalists were pro-British merchants who recognized that foreign trade was essential to maintain a stable economy. Democratic Republicans were mostly common folk who favored France. Federalists were in favor of a strong navy used to protect shippers, whereas the Democratic Republicans wanted a small navy only for coastal defense. Also, the Federalists wanted to restrict free speech, while the Democratic Republicans wanted to allow it. The Federalists believed that the national debt was a blessing, because by paying the state debts, the states would be bonded to the federal government, while the Democratic Republicans did not like the national debt. These two political parties organized the nation's political ideologies into two groups. All in all, the two-party system helped balance political power and ensure that there was always a second choice to the ruling party, therefore strengthening the U.S. government.
We stand with your